prayer does help. Being broke solves nothing. Money solves most things.
The faith over flexing, and
Yeah.
then the land over Lambos.
A man without purpose is akin to a ship without a rudder.
Thank you so much for joining us, Cody. Could you start by sharing just a little bit about yourself and the journey that led you to found the Embrace the Lion and the ETL Roundtable?
Sure. You want the long version or the longer version?
We
Uh,
can whichever one you want to share, brother.
yeah. No, we'll just go with the nuts and bolts of it. So first and foremost, I'm Sarah's trophy husband, and I am the dad to Stetson Foster and the bonus dad to Titus. Those are the three titles that matter the most to me. Everything else is kind of just tinsel. So I live in Oklahoma. If you didn't know that already, you'll hear that in the way that I speak. You'll hear a few y'alls and yes, sirs, I'm sure through this. So just bear with me on that. I promise I'm educated. Um, yeah, so for me, listen, I started Embrace the Lion in 2017. I guess like a bigger view of what I do. So Embrace the Lion as a whole is just an entity that holds a multitude of things that we do. It started as really more of an idea to pull together some development materials for men and mental health, and has grown into a pretty large scale nationwide movement of about 4,500 guys at any given time. We also have one-to-one consulting, mostly on the scale side of business and infrastructure and working with founders on the mental and personal side, as well as on the operating system infrastructure culture team side. Um, Roundtable is our mastermind for kingdom minded men in business. So I was a pastor for 13 years. If you're watching this and you can see that I'm covered in tattoos, obviously non-denominational. They'll be the only ones that let me in the door. And so I was a pastor for 13 years. And so that's kind of my frame of reference on anything. I respect all belief systems. I just say if we work together, mine's going to rub off on you. So we probably we should align there. So Roundtable is for kingdom minded men in business. We focus on, again, the same tenets of ETL, which are head, heart, health, and habits. That mastermind is, we've got a lot of blue collar guys, a lot of guys in service, a lot of guys in brick and mortar. We don't have a lot of the internet guys. We have different masterminds that can serve those guys in a really powerful way. For us, man, I come from blue collar. I come from rural Oklahoma. I own blue collar businesses. So I'm not just a guy that like coaches on owning businesses and the coaching business is my only business. I'm in service. I'm in construction. We have an apparel company called Spiritual World Tour that you'll see on a lot of country artists and Christian CCM artists. I've got I'm part of a beer company called American, based out of Redding, California. And so Roundtable is a container for good men becoming great, no egos. We're more probably interested in, buying land than buying Lambos, um, and more interested, in our faith and in the flex. So hey, it's been a really great time. We help our guys grow their endeavors, become better leaders, become better husbands, become better fathers, become more fulfilled in the endeavors that they pursue, and make a lot of money in the process because prayer does help. Being broke solves nothing. Money solves most things. So
Oh, dude, I love
outside
it.
of that, man, you'll find me. I've been a licensed mechanic for a couple decades, so you'll find me under the hood of one of my trucks. Like they're my pride and joy. I got a 95 Power Stroke. I've got an 84 C10 and an 89 Bronco 2. Also got a bunch of old ratty Harleys that I work on. Something about working on an engine kind of keeps me grounded. Other than that, man, you'll find me at wrestling practice, baseball practice, football practice. I coach all of them. And being in my son's corners is the greatest gift that I have as a man. So
Oh, dude, I love that.
that's me. There
Yeah.
you go.
No,
That's
I love
quick.
that.
People are like, I got to put that on a half speed. That guy talks like there's 12 squirrels all hopped up on Adderall in his head.
It's still a little slower than Russell Brunson, so
That's fair.
I think you're good.
That's fair. Yeah, Russ is quick. I'm still trying to get Russ. So Russ and I both wrestle, and his boys wrestle as well. And so we're both connected through ClickFunnels. Obviously, I'm a big
Yeah,
fan, and we got a lot of mutual friends. But the way that we actually connected was just wrestling. So
love that.
yeah, man.
I love that you said the faith over flexing, and
Yeah,
then the land over Lambos.
yeah.
When you talk about, like, land, do you talk about, like, as investment properties, or do you, like, own
I
hundreds
mean,
of acres, or
yeah.
yeah, let's
Yeah,
break
so
that down.
yeah, so I have rural property, and so one of the endeavors that I'm a part of. So there's a lot of things that I do that I don't talk about because it's not real sexy, and it's not cool on a bumper sticker. Um, But basically, we secure land, rural, undeveloped land, and then we lease that to cattle ranchers that are coming in from out of state who don't necessarily want to purchase land. And so then on the backside of that, we flip that land every few years. And so once it's like remineralized and fertilized from the cattle, we'll then utilize it and we'll lease that to farmers, kind of like as an auxiliary property for them to branch out. And so we'll run crop on that for a few years until we need to flip it and turn it again to remineralize the property. So when I say land, I don't,
Yeah.
I'm all about real estate and I think that that's great. Not my bag. Got a lot of friends that are in it. We got a lot of guys in Roundtable that are in it and in custom home building and obviously in construction framing. And um, we're in both of those and in custom cabinetry, and so love the real estate game, love the housing game. But for me, my family, we've owned a feed store that's been in business since 1929, and so
Wow.
we got a deep, deep love for the farmer. We got a deep love for the rancher, and it's how I grew up. We grew up raising horses. I had, I think, 23 at one point in time. Nothing fancy, none of your Arabians or anything, just cutting horses and horses for rodeo, like barrel racing. So again, now my voice will start to make a little bit more sense. And so, yeah,
Do you guys
that's up.
focus on like land just in Oklahoma, or do you guys
Yeah,
just Oklahoma?
yeah, just
Love that.
Oklahoma. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm originally from Minnesota, and
Okay.
like right outside of the Twin Cities, there's just there's tons of land.
Yeah,
Like we're the home of corn and shit like that.
that's
But
us. Yeah.
yeah,
They're like, "What are you playing out there?" I'm like, "Well, a bunch of corn for
yep,
one." Yeah. So, anyway, it's a good time.
love it. So from like your experience, like what
Yeah.
is the one thing that most men struggle with when, or I mean, honestly overlook when it comes to their like personal and professional lives, and why do you think that this has become like such a common issue?
So I can only speak to what I know, and I think that there's a lot of cultural nuance. There's a lot of socioeconomic nuance that I think should probably be respected in different subsets, right? And so what's true for me not may not be true for different areas of the country and for sure different areas of the world.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say that there's a real discrepancy in the quality of community that a man has. And so, biblically, we say that iron sharpens iron. And I think for a lot of men, they find themselves on an island. Um, either they're stuck in the same circle that they've always been in. And so there's a law of the lid. Like I can't really get past where I've always been because I don't want my boys to think that I think I'm better than them. I don't want to miss beer on Friday nights. I don't want to have to start talking a different way, dressing a different way. And so like the law of the lid kind of keeps us stuck. The other is we don't have a frame or really the insight. Not that it's not available. We just maybe don't have the insight to find where those pockets of community are that are going to push us past where it is that we currently are. And I think it's difficult when you have a higher vision for yourself. And I think most men do. It's been said that a man without purpose is akin to a ship without a rudder. So, I would say another predicament that men find themselves in is being caught in a bit of a rut. And so kind of just losing a sense of purpose. And so when a man loses a sense of purpose, he finds himself distracted. And when you distract, you isolate and you medicate and you sedate yourself and you look for love in all the wrong places. And so when I've found we connect a man to a deep sense of purpose and a deep sense of calling in his life. And understand purpose is just the byproduct of everything that you do. Um, you don't, it's not something that you find under a rock. No book is going to get it to you. Personal development and the modern church have done a really great job of making commodity out of purpose. And like you're just one book away from your purpose. And everything is just selling you into the next deeper version of your purpose. But purpose is just in everything. Purpose is in how I parent. Purpose is in how I love my wife. Purpose is in how I talk to you. Purpose is in how I talk to the homeless man at the gas station and how I care for them. Purpose is how I lead myself to lead the kids in my son's schools that don't have dads that show up for them. So it's all things. And then calling is like this thing that you drive toward, like this thing that's larger than you, the thing that makes you angry and keeps you up at night. So when we can tie a man to those things and put him in qualified community, meaning that you should always qualify the criticism. If I don't have what you want, right, and there's not markers in my life that would lead you to believe that I'm a little bit further ahead in some areas than you, don't take my advice.
Yep.
And so a lot of times we look for people on the internet or people in our immediate circles or In some ways, people from our churches who don't really have what we want and convince us to stay kind of where we are and stay small, in a number of different ways, because to want more is to be greedy and should be grateful for what you have, and all of that's true. Um, but as I read in Matthew, there's a parable of talents, and the more resourceful and the more scrappy we are with utilizing those effectively, the more God blesses them. So that's why we put our men in the community that we do. That's why we lead them the way that we do. Um, Help them draw closer to God. Because when you draw closer to God, you draw closer to purpose. When you draw closer to purpose, you find that calling, and when you can lean into that calling, well, man, the sky's the limit. You don't have time for depression and anxiety. Those things don't have to exist. Not that I'm diminishing what people walk through. I've been there for myself. But I find that when I can tie to something bigger than myself, and I can understand how the brain works and why it works the way that it does to want to keep me perceptively safe, then I'm able to kind of bypass that and continue on with what I'm called to.
No, that's super important. For me,
Yeah.
there was so long where I just didn't have a purpose. I spent from age 3 to 18 playing hockey, and I was like, my purpose was I'm gonna make it
Really?
professionally. Like, that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
And
You up north guys. We don't
yeah.
know. We don't have it here, but yeah, dude. Anybody up north, they're like hockey. I'm like, man, I guess we got
Yeah.
wrestling. Yeah.
No, state of Minnesota, so
Yeah.
or state of hockey, is
Oh yeah.
Minnesota, but yeah, man, by 13, because my stepdad was like a meth dealer, so I was like
Wow.
just in these like dark pockets of like where children shouldn't be in.
Totally.
And he was like super abusive. And once I got cut from the varsity team because I got on probation, was on probation for 2 years, finally got off, went to go try out again.
Mhm.
And they're like, they brought me to the locker room. They're like, you're good enough, but we just can't put you on the team because the other parents will complain. And dude, that fucking shattered me.
I bet.
Like,
I
I
bet.
lost all sense of purpose. I did every single thing that you listed. I started to medicate and numb into other drugs.
Yeah.
I put my love into a woman that I definitely shouldn't have, and we were together for almost 10 years and married for almost 4, and,
Wow.
like, dude, it's so important, and it wasn't until I started to hang out with better people and
Yeah.
surround myself with a better community of people that I started to realize, like, you know what? I could be doing so much more in my life. So I love that you bring that, and I love that you bring the faith into it. Um, could you share some of like how you bring faith and how faith has kind of like shaped your approach to the coaching and mentoring?
Well, I mean, sure. I mean, everything is spiritual. Right? I mean, in kind of my paradigm and worldview is the way that we articulate conversation, the way that we love one another, the way we take care of ourselves physically and emotionally and personally. Um, it's all spiritual, and thankfully for us, for guys who follow the Bible as kind of the way, then we have a blueprint for that, and we have an incredible blueprint in Jesus for that. And so the way that we lead Roundtable is, I mean, we have a daily proverb that we walk through, and then we have a study that goes along with that that you can lead with your family. Um, but even in that, we have 2 calls a week. One call's on Monday, one call is on Thursday. But our Monday call, I mean, it's always wrapped in like, so if you think about me as teaching, facilitating, I'm wrapping scripture inside of it. So it's not a sermon, but you can take me out of the pulpit, but you can't take the pastor out of me. And so it's just always going to be hardwired into what I do. I mean, for 13 years, 7 days a week, I taught 5 times a week. Like all I did was tell stories and tie that back into scriptural reference to help people apply it into their everyday life. And so that is just translated into what we do in Roundtable. And inside of that, then we bake in infrastructure, business modalities, how to lead your family effectively, how to initiate communication in a healthier and more dynamic way. Because I think for a lot of guys, even when we go back to the initial question, a lot of guys, one, didn't learn how to communicate well. There's no real class on that. And certainly for a lot of us, we grew up with parents or grandparents who didn't show feelings or emotion, like that just wasn't their frame. And so we either go on one side, like we either are stoic like that and very hard edged, or we kind of flip to the other side and we're like super emotional. And so we kind of try to dial that into a really happy, healthy place of still maintaining integrity as a man who protects, provides, pioneers, and pastors his home. Also leaning into like we are emotional beings, right? Like you can be emotional, that's fine. Um, so it's all the things. It's leaning into the business side, it's leaning into the marriage side. Some of our guys aren't married, so it's leaning into when you get into a relationship, what does it look like to, to parent in a way that is healthy and meaningful and to be present? What does it mean to lead your organization in that way? And scripture just ties back to all of that. Scripture gives us a really great base and framework to model. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
Yeah, no, faith is it's such a, like, deeply personal yet
Yeah.
universal topic.
How do you use it in your life?
For me, like, I lost my faith for a long time. I grew up Catholic.
Okay.
Going through all the stuff that I did, I was like, "How could there be a God and let some kid go through, like, this?"
We had similar stories growing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went through that up until I was 18, 19, and,
Okay.
real quick, and I'm not trying to Kanye you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you finish, but, uh, so the way that I got back into church, because I went through a lot when I was a kid, it was pretty dark, and then we came to live with my dad and things got a lot healthier. Um, but I'd kinda written God off, like, my whole family was Southern Baptist and everything was pretty heavy rule and regulation, and there wasn't really a spot for me, kid out of divorce, and didn't come from the right side of the street and, grew up in a single bedroom trailer and didn't look like the other kids and didn't talk quite like the other kids. And so, not that the church like shunned me or anything. It didn't feel like home.
Yeah.
Like everybody had two parents, everybody had a big house, like everything just looked really clean and cookie cutter. And I'm like, well, here we are, like in the backwoods of rural Oklahoma with just my dad. And so it just wasn't a really great fit, and then trying to reconcile that God has a plan in the midst of all the things that we walk through, I'm like, "Well, that's BS, like, God doesn't do that to kids, and if that's God, I don't want that." And so then just went down the academic route of like, well, God is just man's created, likeness so that he can find meaning and purpose in the existence, and just started going down all these rabbit holes. I was managing a garage. I said I've been a mechanic for, a couple decades now, and the owner, kept trying to get me to go to church. I'm like, "No, thanks, man." No. And, I was living in an apartment with my best friend, who passed in 2017 to an overdose, and I buried him on my birthday. I
Oh,
was still a pastor at the time. And, so I was living with him selling dope out of our apartment while managing this garage, and the owner asked me to get coffee so we could talk about expansion. So I'm like, "Sure, let's go." Saturday night. It was in a church.
oh,
Now, I'd never seen a church like it. It was like 5,000 people. There's a coffee shop. The music was good. Like, you know what I mean? It was an organ. The pastor comes out like in Harley Davidson gear. And I'm like, what is this?
that's awesome.
And he started talking about his childhood. Like it just happened to be like he shared about it. And I'm like, yo, this guy, okay, well, no, I don't know this Jesus. What is the Jesus he's talking about? And so that night, dude, I answered the altar call, like I rededicated because I gave my life to Christ in like, I don't know, fifth grade. And so I went down, I met him and his wife. We talked for about an hour and a half. Like we just hit it off. You know, those people like you meet and you're like, you just lands. And that
Huh.
was us. So I went back that night, moved out of the apartment, got an efficient, moved in with my dad for about a week, got an efficiency. And within a couple weeks, I was starting to serve at the church. Within a month, I had a job at the church
Wow.
leading worship and which dude, 19 years old, leading 5,000 people when you're like, don't even know your head from your butt was like not probably the smartest thing. But man, it was bigger than me. God had a plan through all of it. And for the next 13 years, I got my academics under my belt and I was able to serve some amazing communities and was able to travel the country and do that at scale. And yeah, dude, all because of a coffee on a Saturday night.
Dude, that's such a beautiful story.
Well, and the fact that my best friend passed away is like and all of my friends, the last real true friend I've had for over 20 years, I just, lost her in July to cancer. Um, but all of my, like, hood rat friends that hung out with high school, they're all either dead or they're in prison.
Yep.
Genuinely, there's none that aren't. And so, dude, had God not intervened in that particular moment, had the owner not asked me that one time, which is why you have to keep that's why you keep asking people. And that's why you keep showing up and why you keep offering a light and why integrity matters because even when you think people aren't watching, they are.
Yeah.
And you may be the only Jesus that they see, and maybe and it's a lot of pressure, but it's also a gift that you have the responsibility to represent Jesus well. So,
And not only that, it's like from a marketing standpoint, like sometimes you got to switch up your approach. You got to change the way that you're trying
yeah,
to like get your message in front of people. And it seems
yeah,
like the owner of that like the mechanic
yeah.
shop did exactly that.
He
And
did what he did, man.
yeah, that's so
Got me,
powerful.
got me.
Like mine, I got really big into like cocaine and ecstasy at 18.
Yeah,
Um, Almost died in my ex-wife's like bathtub um, from just taking too much ecstasy.
yeah,
And she was an atheist, so she didn't like believe in God. And I just had all this like dark stuff happen to me growing up. So I was like, you know what? I don't believe in God either. Like, how could he like let that happen to me? And then
yeah.
I was running the trap house as well. And one day I was just sitting on the couch. I just got done smoking and
Mhm.
I was like, I'm going to turn on YouTube and turn on YouTube and the Ty Lopez, like here in my garage commercial back in like 2016, I think it was.
Mhm.
I don't know what it was about that man. I have no idea, but
Really?
just seeing the Lambos, seeing the books, hearing him
Yeah.
talk about like mindset and
Mhm.
success, I was like, dude, I need to do something different. So I went to Barnes and Noble and I picked up the book was Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Yeah, it's
And that book,
right over there.
yeah, that book completely changed my perspective and just changed my entire life.
Mhm.
Because I had dropped out of high school. I tell people I was going to end up in three places. It was either going to be living under a bridge, it was going to be in prison, or it was going to be 6 feet under.
Wow.
And just one thing led to another. I moved from Minnesota down to Florida just to make sure that I got away from like all of that stuff because it was just so easy to make money selling cannabis and stuff like that that
Sure.
I just I knew I needed to get out. So I moved to Florida and it was probably about a year after I moved to Florida. I had this dream and this woman in all white came and talked to me and she said, you need to leave your wife. You have so much more that's going to happen for your life, but that's the one thing that is holding you back and keeping you from getting to where you want to go. Cause it was probably 2, 3 years that I was like telling my ex-wife, like, hey, we need to create these goals. We need to have this vision for what we want to do. And
Yeah.
nothing like she wouldn't create goals. She had no like vision on where she wanted her future
Wow.
and I listened to that message and that dream, and 6 months later, we got a divorce, found out that she was already sleeping with someone else and, like, all this stuff, and then I did a bunch of mushrooms one day and, really just God came and talked to me and was like, "It doesn't matter anything that happens in your life, you've already gone through so much that everything is going to be okay. You just gotta trust the process, follow what I have planned for you, and just take this next step and just continue to go and do what you're doing." And dude, s about 6 months after that, I matched with my now wife on Hinge, went and met with her. We were talking. We were like, "You know what? We should start going to church."
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I go and check the mail. There's a flyer for a local church in the mail, and I went there, and like you said, like, this was not a Catholic church. This was
Yeah.
Christian. I don't know what denomination or anything it
Yeah.
was, but the music was lit, like, the people were just so nice and welcoming, and we went every single Sunday until we had my daughter, and then we just didn't wanna bring her there. but I'll still turn it on because we moved um, away from where we were living at that point. So we don't have that church close to us, but they stream it on YouTube. So I'll turn it on YouTube every once in a while.
Yeah.
But Pastor Aaron there, dude, he is such a good speaker. Like you said, use storytelling, make sure it's like super relatable to the people that are listening to it, and then tie it into the biblical principles. And you have a message that is so powerful that it's going to change somebody's life.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, man. What a story. What a story, dude.
Yeah. Josh, I know you didn't want to talk about yours, but I was talking to Josh Forty the other day and told him
Oh, Josh.
coming on
I
the
love
podcast.
Josh.
He's like, dude, Cody's got a crazy fucking story too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know if you want to share a little bit more of it and
Oh, the only reason I don't is because like just because I've been interviewed so many times. And I was like,
yeah,
oh, we could just Google it, honestly. Like, let's just serve them. Like, what do they need right now?
yep,
I mean, it's kind of like what I said, man. Like I just grew up, divorced home. Mom made some poor choices and got with some less than stellar, people in her life. And those people did some less than stellar things to us. And and so that created a pretty gnarly narrative in my brain about love and value.
yep,
And so, I mean, if you can, it's relative, but some of you guys will understand this. So I grew up with, you have adults that are constantly idealizing suicide and then like verbalizing that to you as like a small child. Um, and going through very manic episodes and very depressive episodes, and there's just nothing is consistent. Um, you learn really quickly how to diffuse situations, but your whole modality of being loved is by diffusing issues and like solving problems. And so then the issue becomes like when peace exists, well, peace can exist because chaos is where I find love.
yep,
And if we're not in chaos enough, if I'm not solving something, then I'm not worth loving. And grow up, yeah, get mixed into some negative things. But while all that, I mean, I was still top of my class, did great academically, did great in music, did great in sports. Like you would not have known. All my teachers loved me. I was a great kid. I was just really hurt, and I didn't even know how to process or what to do with it. And so, my guidance counselor in high school actually took me to a clinic when I was a senior, and that probably was like a real catalyst for changing my life early on. And then again, going to the church and getting involved in the church. The problem was that fed an addiction I didn't know I had, which was for affirmation. And so that led to 13 years of I listen, I loved my season of ministry. I loved all of it. It was amazing. God did amazing things. I was a youth pastor for a decade of that. Like the issue was though, is like you get addicted to being needed.
yep,
And in the church, there's no shortage of issues people are having and no shortage of problems. And so you get to be the guy who's solving problems all the time and feeding that addiction of needing to be needed. The problem was I get married in the middle of that and we have a son and I'm working 16 to 18 hours a day. I don't know how to shut it off at night. So I drink at night to try and just like go to sleep. But then that turns into an issue and a problem that I don't even really know how to articulate. And I can't talk to anybody because I'm a pastor and I got to be perfect. So I can't talk about it. Um, she decides she doesn't want to do it anymore. And so we start going through the divorce process. She starts seeing someone. And in the midst of that, it was just it was a chaotic time. I stayed in ministry. There wasn't a reason for me not to. But in the midst of that, just a lot of stuff happened. So, like 2 weeks after she let me know that she didn't want to do it anymore, I did not see it coming. I was blindsided. I thought we were fine. We were kind of roommates, but uh, in the
yeah,
church, like I didn't really know any different. You know what I mean? So I had seen that my whole life. So I'm like, that's normal, isn't it? Um, you never see anybody overly affectionate or anything else in the church. And I didn't have that model in parents growing up. So I thought it was normal. Um, and to be fair, like I put a lot of trauma into this scenario as well. So like anytime I'd get overwhelmed, anytime that I would get super, super stressed out, well, what's the only thing I know to do when I get super stressed? Oh yeah, I'm just gonna say I'm gonna kill myself. So now I'm throwing out the same threats to someone who has no idea the context of any of this, and it's just, like, super traumatizing. Uh, and but 2 weeks after she let me know, my 18-month-old niece was murdered. Worst case of sexual assault to a minor on Oklahoma record, so I led her funeral. My brother, her dad was, incarcerated at the time. He was in just for some stuff that he had gone through with some drugs, and so, we had to let him know, and so then I led that, and then, a couple weeks later, an aunt passed, unexpectedly to cancer, so led her funeral. A couple months later, my sister-in-law committed suicide, so I led her funeral. Then I had a pastor put a gun in his mouth and leave behind a family, so I led his funeral. Mentor died in a motorcycle accident, so led his funeral. I had another couple pastor friends take their own lives, so led their funerals. Then found my best friend and led his funeral on my 33rd birthday. Then 19-year-old sister goes home for lunch. Intruder strangles her to the point of unconsciousness, so I held her hand as she died, and I led her funeral all while being a pastor, all while going through a divorce. And God's got a plan, and everything's okay. And I'm just going to keep solving problems, and everything's going to be fine. And for a lot of us, even in business, we can kind of normalize stress and kind of normalize that anxiety.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm good. I'm built for it. I'm built for it. I'm built for it. I'm built for it. But your body isn't. Your body's the same as everybody else's body. Your mind might be insane, but your body's the same. So I ended up going septic. My body just like it went in on itself. Developed like I got very very sick. Developed infection. Just due to just the cortisol was unprecedented, and it turned my body toxic. So I was in the hospital. I was unconscious for I think 3 days. Third day I rose again. um, and about 25 pounds lighter, and walked into the bathroom just looking emaciated, and I was just like, "Is this it? I just led my best friend's funeral, and his little 5-year-old son was sitting in the front row. Like, is that my son? Is this what I'm doing?" And so I just made the decision that like I needed to step out of ministry, not no good scandal, nothing. I just recognized like this is gonna kill me. I got to figure out why I'm doing this. I got to figure out why I'm not taking care of myself and like laying my health down on the altar of some self-perceived success. And so that's where Embrace the Lion was kind of born. Is like I just needed to find God. So Embrace the Lion was just find God. I just needed to find God for myself. Not did my grandparents raise me to believe this? Wait, do I believe this because I'm paid to teach it? Do I believe this because it was an outlet for me? Do I believe this because I went to school for it? What do I actually believe? And I didn't know about any of this, like the whole coaching world. Like I had started some fitness coaching on the side. Um, but this whole world was new to me. Um, I didn't know about a lot of the friends that I have now. I, the only thing I really knew was like Way of the Master, which is like Kirk Cameron. And I'm like, well, that's just a little too Christianese for me. And so just kind of set out to build a new frame for myself, got in therapy, put myself in therapy, and started to chip away at some things, started sharing my story online. This is like 2017. Everything goes viral. And kind of easy to go viral at that time. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
pretty easy. But going crazy viral. So I got invited to a conference just to attend an entrepreneurial conference. I was like, well, cool. Yeah, I want to start. Maybe I want to start walking with people in a different capacity, like outside of being a pastor, but this is what I want to do. Um, but there's some things I want to say that I can't say behind a pulpit. And so I go to this conference. I'm like, dude, a month out of 2 months out of ministry. Go to this conference, don't know anybody. Um, and it's cool. It's in Phoenix. So it's like 130 degrees and power goes out at the event. And it's lunchtime, and dude, it's like balls hot. Like it's like a cooker in there. So I just call I know we're all staying at the same hotel. So I called the hotel. I'm like, hey, we need a conference room with like 300 seats. We need 2 projectors. We need to run those projectors to 2 screens. Pipe that back. We're going to tie everything into a laptop. We also need 2 wireless mics, which means we're going to need receivers. Um, if you and so we're gonna need speakers as well. And so I'm like, how long can we get that? And she's like, an hour. I'm like, perfect. So what we're gonna do is I need shuttles coming over here and water downstairs, and I'm gonna push our food trucks over to the hotel and tell everybody to go over there to eat lunch. And then we'll just be ready in an hour to start. Would that be okay? Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. Go tell the food trucks to leave. Go get everything on drives for AV, which is your audio visual. Because all I've done for 13 years is events,
Yeah.
conferences, like big conferences, like we're talking like 20, 30,000 people, not 300 entrepreneurs. Um, this was easy. And so I go to the founder. I'm like, here's what's happening. Here's what's going on. And he just looks at me and goes, who the F are you? And dude, for real, Michael, like I forgot I wasn't at a church call. I forgot. It hadn't been enough time. I thought I was still in ministry. I thought I was just doing what I do. And dude, my heart sank. I was like, I ruined everything. I ruined my chances. Like I don't even know these people. He's who invited me. And now he's like, who are you? I'm like, I ruined it. And so I'm like trying to like just be quiet and I just go over to eat lunch. And I see a guy sitting by himself with kind of white hair, older gentleman. I'm like, well, he's not going to sit by himself. So I just go sit with him. And he's like, hey, you're the pastor. I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, yeah. Everybody's talking about how you just saved the I knew you had to be a pastor because only a pastor knows how to do all those things. He's like, you've been in events for a long time. I'm like, yeah, dude, I wasn't even thinking about it. And I feel so bad. He's like, no, dude, you just made a name for yourself and you didn't even know it. I'm like, oh, he's like, nobody just does something without being asked and nobody does something without a motive. And I'm like, oh, I just, he's like, I know. He's like, that's why this is so special. He's like, you want to be on my podcast? I'm like, what's a podcast? I don't, dude, I don't know.
Love it.
And I don't know. And he's like, well, it's like a radio show. I'm like, oh, huh, cool. I was like, we'll just talk. He's like, we'll just talk. I was like, cool. When do you want to do it? He's like, right now. I'm like, now? He's like, it's up in my hotel. I'm like, okay. Hindsight, like, don't go to dudes' hotel rooms that you don't know. But he was like, I'm a pastor. You're a pastor. He said he was a pastor. So I'm like, cool. So we go up there and I meet Tom Bilyeu and meet a bunch of other guys, Sean Whalen and a bunch of guys who are now all friends. And Tom's like, what do you do? And I'm like, I help pastors take guns out of their mouths. And he looked at me, he goes, bro, it's pretty effing heavy, dude. I don't know that's a heavy tagline. I'm like, and I'm like, okay. He's like, from marketing, he's like, respectfully. I'm like, what about helping good men become great? He's like, that's way better. Do that. I was like, okay. So thankfully he let me know. And so I sit down and Alan is like, so do you have a bio? I'm like, no, I don't even have an LLC. I don't have anything. And, uh, and so he's like, oh, you ready? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I can wing it. I've done this before. I'm like, cool. And he's like, I've asked you enough questions. I think I know who you are, what you're about. I'm like, perfect. So he puts his headset on. He's like, all right, welcome back. This is Alan Taylor with Entrepreneur Magazine, entrepreneur.com, and
Oh,
Entrepreneur
shit.
Radio. And but that was me. I was like, oh shit. I'm like Ricky Bobby. I'm like, I don't know what to do with my hands right now. I don't, th- I'm not even an entrepreneur yet, guys. I don't even know. Listen, like I've run businesses, but like they're not mine.
Yeah.
I'm not worthy. But we just started talking, man. I just shared my story. And it's still, you can still find it on Entrepreneur. Ended up getting picked up by the Today Show, got picked up by USA Today, got picked up by all this stuff and just went crazy, which led to about like 200 podcasts in the year that I was on, just sharing my story. Um, and that led to a lot of opportunity and kind of bridged the path to where we are now. Recognize that for me being a mechanic for so long, the business side came very, very simply. So I literally just see business as an engine. And so there's no emotional attachment to me. I'm just able to go in, diagnose, we can fix, and that's it. We can take parts off, we can put parts on to optimize. But there's no, if you blow a hose going down the highway, you're not gonna like just pull the car over and be like, I'm a horrible driver. I'm never driving again. F this car. I'll walk from now on. You wouldn't do that. You'd be like, well, it needs a new hose. Cool. Well, let's get to putting a new hose on it. And in the meantime, we're blowing a hose. Probably should check the radiator because something might be clogged there. We might need to flush the system. There's some things we need to look at on the backside of understanding, that we have a blown hose. But we do that in business. One thing fails. I'm a horrible entrepreneur. This is the worst thing. I'm scrapping this business. I'm getting into crypto, whatever. Um, and so if we can just remove some of the emotional uh, constraints from it, well, then it becomes a very simple process. I mean, I guess it can get complicated, but we chose this, right? Either you get good with your hands and good at solving problems, or you find something else to do. And then everything that I've done in ministry for, 15 years, leadership, organizational development, leading teams, curating sermons, doing a lot of research academically. So having a real affinity for study and application on that side of things, understanding marketing and understanding sales, because you're selling salvation, you're selling an intangible. Right? I can sell your 997 course. Shut up. Like, um, you just learn that all of these things that you've been cultivating over decades are the very things that people actually struggle with in business and infrastructure and the idea of purpose and fulfillment. that's all I know is helping people navigate those conversations. And now doing it without the dopamine hit of needing anyone's affirmation, doing it as me, usually in Wranglers and work boots, running a 95 power stroke, um, hitting job sites, lugging feed when my dad needs me to on a wrestling mat most nights of the week. I'm just me. And for a lot of people, that really resonates because it gives them permission to be them. Like, you don't have to wear all black and Jordans, like, and drive a Lambo. You can. I think that's cool. Most of my friends do. But you don't have to. You can do other things. Um, and so that's what's led into now, like the entities that we have and the organizations I'm a part of. Happily married to just an extraordinary woman who I would not be where I'm at without her. She is being married to somebody like me is again like my brain is like 12 squirrels on a 3-day coke bender in Vegas, and like my job is to make them dance in sequence all the time. And with that, there's running all the endeavors. Like, man, having the stability of a woman who just gets you and knows you and champions you and understands you that you get to love
Oh, it's
in an incredible
powerful.
way. Dude, there's just nothing better, man.
No.
Like, we don't people are like, you gotta fight. I'm like, no, you don't. We don't. No, sure don't. The only time we've ever had arguments is when I'm afraid of peace and I've tried to stir something up because I need to fix something. And you
Yep.
know what she does? She'll say, like, we have like codes. And she's like, "Hey, Brad Pitt, we doing Fight Club today?" And I know, oh yeah, I don't have to do this. So, man, so that's it, dude. That's in a nutshell. That's kind of how I got to where I am. And
Dude, I love
it's
that.
not, but it's not been without its, its twists and its turns. There are some things just because of the massive like unhealth of them that I don't dive into really deeply.
Yeah.
Um, but man, that's the 30,000 foot view of of how we got here. And so it wasn't without its bumps, it wasn't without its trauma, it wasn't without hurting some people in the process. When I first got into the space, and then I started getting around all the guys who were in the men's space, I thought I had to use a lot of profanity and call people out and tell people to tell the truth and like be real aggressive because that's what you do. And that lasted about, I don't know, 2 weeks. And then some friends of mine were like, what are you doing, dude? And like, you don't yell. That's what you don't, why are you doing? Like, I had students like, hey, you're like, I went this weird tangent for a while of like trying to figure out who God was to me and said a lot of things about like universalism that were just real confusing to students that I led for a decade and real confusing to parents. And so like there was shrapnel. Like my journey wasn't without, you know, when, when, when you don't know how to tend the wound that
Yeah.
you're carrying, you'll bleed on people that never cut you. And I bled on people. And thankfully the blood of Christ was far greater than the blood of my insecurity and trauma.
Oh, dude, I think we've all kind of been there. I know when I first
Yeah.
started in entrepreneurship, I was wearing like suits every day. I was
Oh,
just
bro, I got like 25 custom suits, bro. Yeah, I got so many custom. I was known for suits. I was known for suits and fancy watches. I still
yeah.
got fancy watches too.
Yeah, I was in suits. I would like
Yeah.
slick my hair
But
back with
but also, dude,
gel.
if you don't come from money and you start making money, like, I feel like it's a rite of passage. I feel like I never tell anyone, "Don't go buy everything that you think that you want," because I think you should.
Yeah.
I think go make your money, go blow it so that you know, well, that doesn't feel any different. And maybe for you it does. Maybe like you get the thing and you're like, "Yes, this was it. Cool. Then you should have done it." For me, like, I never wanna say, "Oh, yeah, just don't even go that route," because then I'm just another dude trying to talk you out of what you think your dreams are. No, go, do it,
Experiment. Yeah.
and
Life
then
is all about
recognize,
experimenting.
like, again, for me, we do I do pretty well, dude. Like, I never talk money. Because I got mentors who run circles around me in, like, 10, 11 figures, venture capital. I'm blessed with just some very, very incredible men who have incredible families, been married for 30 years with amazing kids who love God and do great things in the world. And so I'm never going to be arrogant and flexing. And I think you only flex money whenever you're trying to sell something.
Yeah.
Um, some of the wealthiest guys I know here are in cattle, and they'll never talk. They never talk about any of that, and they're always in dusty old jeans. And so, for me, I do well. I just recognize that what I value more than anything is just time. I love building I love taking on companies into our portfolio. I love building. I actually don't mind the exit process. It's a bear, but I don't mind it. We've done it a few times now, but it's all just so that I can be at practice. It's also that I can have my nights with my wife. It's all so that I can have breakfast with my kids. Um, that's it. Like, I just want time. I want time.
I feel that. No, I feel that
In peace.
so
Peace is
deep.
highly undervalued. Peace is highly undervalued in our world. So,
Yeah, there's a few things in your story that I really resonate with. One is where anytime anything's going really, really well
yeah.
in my relationship with my wife, we always find something that we're like, you know what, we're gonna kind of poke the bear right here. And then we'll take that step back and we realize, like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, dude.
Like,
But it's real. And I
yeah,
think if people could understand that, like, hey, that's just like a, and I'm not like the whole, like, I don't talk all, you know, crystals and woo and like trauma and, divine masculine. I don't even know what the hell all that means, but I do know that we all have trauma responses. I've done enough
yep.
therapy to know that. And I walk with enough people to recognize that if we could just take a step back and recognize each other's trauma, and it's not that we do things, we do. We need to understand why. And when you can understand why and you can not hold judgment against that and then decide to do something different, like those little baby steps, like you were going to pick a fight, but you bit your tongue and you didn't. Might not be a big deal to you, but that's massive growth. You were going to yell and throw something because that's what your dad always did. And you don't, you hold it. You don't do it because you recognize you can see yourself doing it and you know it's going to get you the attention that you want, but you also know it's not healthy and your kids are in the room. So you don't do it. Massive growth because what you're doing is you're breaking generational curses that you didn't even know you were responsible to break, and it stops with you. So now you transform that trauma. You don't transmit it to your kids, and you don't transmit it to your wife. You don't transmit it to the people around you.
Even like arguing, like sometimes we'll find ourselves like, I wouldn't say fighting, but like kind of going back and forth. And then my daughter's in the room and I'm like, what are we doing? Like, yo, let's wait until she goes to sleep. We can have our
Mhm.
discussion and everything, but let's not do it in front of Athena.
Yep.
Cause like it's just like you said, like those generational curses. Like I seen my mom fighting all the time with my stepdad, and then
Yeah.
she had a similar experience with her mom and her dad, and we had these traumas. Luckily, so my wife, she does like shamanic healing.
Oh, okay.
She's
Like
decent
that's what
self.
she does. Like that's what she does for a living.
Yep, yep.
Get
So
what even is that?
so
Shimon?
yeah, so she trained under a Peruvian shaman for a year, and essentially they taught her how to tap into people's like energy forces. I'm probably butchering it.
Is it
For
like
like
the people who, forgive me, I'm Oklahoma, okay, and I've
yeah.
seen it done. Is it Reiki? Is that kind of what it is? Like, where they, like,
So it's a level deeper than
okay,
Reiki. So how
Reiki, yeah,
she like explains it is like
yeah,
Reiki's like going to get a massage.
okay,
Shamanic healing is like going to get like surgery on your energy field. So like a lot of the people that come to her have dealt with like sexual abuse and stuff like that growing
yeah,
up. So she'll actually be able to tap into their energy field without them telling her that they've been sexually abused or anything like that, and
mhm,
actually pinpoint the exact almost age that they were when that happened and be able to remove the trauma from the body.
wow.
I don't know if you ever read the book, Body Keeps the Score, but that's
Which is why I led in, like, with going steps, like, you
yep,
may think you're really good at normalizing things, but understand, like, your body is the same as everybody. You only have a certain amount of threshold for all of
yep,
that.
100%. So
Yeah,
like what she does is she goes in there and she actually like removes that trauma from the body, working with different spirit
really
guides and stuff like that. Um,
interesting.
like she's sometimes scared to bring it up at church and stuff like that when people ask like,
I
"Hey,
can't
what do you
imagine. Yeah.
think?"
They're like shamanic, that's she and demonic.
Yeah,
Look
yeah,
at
and how she looks at it is like, Jesus came here, he healed people. We're created in the same image as God. Jesus was created in God's image. God gave us each a unique ability to go out there and make the world a better place,
Sure.
and that's her God-given gift is what she looks at it as, and I completely agree, like, she's helped me so much with, like, how I think about money and different things like that. Because, like, I mean, growing up, we grew up somewhat middle class, my stepdad was a drug dealer,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah, mine too.
yeah, I had all these, like, crazy beliefs around money, like money doesn't grow on trees, money is for evil people, like
Yeah.
all of this stuff. And she was able to kind of like go through and she was like, okay, like, are you feeling something right here? And pointed to a place in my body. And like I was actually feeling a knot right there. And she was able to just extract that. And
Wild.
dude, it's the craziest experience, but it's so powerful and it just
Yeah, I don't think I've ever known anybody like who actually does it, because we don't really I'm sure we probably have that here. It's just not like in you know what I mean? It's like not
yeah,
in my world. Um, so I'm sure there has to be people that do it here. But that's interesting. I've heard of it. Again, probably more on the Reiki side
yeah.
than this, which sounds like, it's a level more intense. Um, I always find these things fascinating. I really like I kind of suspend any judgment around it because talk to somebody who's not a Christian and we sound batshit crazy too. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
Like, what do you mean he died and rose again
yeah,
3 days later?
yeah. And like, there's like at least a dozen other religions that believe the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it, I think we all have our things. I think we all come back to how we find our own way and what's meaningful for us. So I'm, I love good conversation.
Yep.
I know what I'm convicted to and I know what I believe and I know what the boundaries of that belief are. Um, and so to then find other people and be able to talk about their boundaries and what they believe with no judgment, right? Because Richard Rohr says the true spiritual contentment is when there's nothing to prove, hide, or protect. And so when you can go into it, like most times when we go in speaking religion or spirituality, like we're holding those beliefs with a closed fist. The problem is you can't shake hands with a closed fist. And oftentimes it becomes a weapon of defense.
Yep.
So when we
Yeah,
don't have to hold
I was at, Josh's house, like, I think a week and a half ago, and we
is it
had, there was a Muslim guy there, there was a Mormon, there was a Christian, and then there was a guy that just didn't kind of believe in anything, and this was after the, boot camp and everything was over. And we all just sat there and just talked about everybody's beliefs, and that conversation was it was incredible, dude.
yeah.
Like,
Are you in
so
the
amazing.
golden mic thing?
I am, yeah.
Oh, cool. So you've got guys in that group that are just all different beliefs.
Yep, and
Amazing.
it's
Are you guys
crazy.
swapping podcasts so that you can talk about your like, and just go deep in those things? Because I feel like that would be such an incredible nobody really does that.
No, we haven't, that's definitely something that I want to start doing with this is, like,
Yeah,
getting
or you
people
guys
on with
all
different
do it
beliefs.
in that big circle like you guys are in, just put a bunch of cameras and you guys all just talk like the
We were recording it.
oh,
We
you
had
did?
a voice note going, and Josh
Yeah,
was like, "I gotta get this." So he started recording it, so he'll
yeah.
probably put it out. But yeah, dude, so powerful with all the conversations and just really trying to understand how people believe and, like, how
Mhm.
their religion works. Because I feel like too many people that are Christians are scared to even learn about how all these other religions even work, but they're so quick to say, "No, my God is the God." And when we start pointing fingers, like, then we're judging people, and that's one thing that the Bible talks about is
Right.
not to judge people.
Yep, yep. Yeah, unless you wanna receive the same judgment.
Yep.
And I just found, I guess, in walking with people for so long, like, everybody's just, unless you ask for my accountability, it's always gonna be perceived as a threat. Any accountability that's not asked for is always a threat. And until you know someone or know someone's story and they invite you into that conversation, it's all assumption. And you're judging against things that you don't necessarily understand. And so for me, it's just how do we enter into something, suspend judgment, suspend, and having, I've got an older brother who's in prison for drugs, and I've been surrounded by addiction for most of my life, and um, deeply involved in the homeless community here in Tulsa, and have been for some time. Deeply involved with the Demand Project, which is the largest restoration center long term for girls 11 to 17 trafficked. So we do, and that's out of here in Oklahoma. When you just hear stories and you understand that, man, people are just fighting things you don't fully get. There's just not a really reason. You're really just judging because your ego wants to prove itself right, and ego can't ever walk with people. So
Love that. So, like, beyond the Bible,
beyond
what is one book that you think everybody should read?
everyone, or like entrepreneurs, or like, I mean, men. Every man should
Yeah.
read After Man Thinketh. Every man should
Yeah,
read that book.
great book.
I think that uh, realist. I think Think and Grow Rich is a great book. I think that's great for the mindset. Outwitting the Devil is a great book as well. Both are Napoleon Hill. Um, what else? Mindset by Carol Dweck. Grit by
Angelina
Angela
Duckworth.
Duckworth. That's a great book.
Yep.
Those are phenomenal reads.
I'd say one powerful book is Strong Men or Strong Hard Times Create
Great
Strong
Strong
Men.
Men. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's by Stepan Aranio or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, he passed away.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. I just recommended that book yesterday. Funny that you say that.
Such a
Yeah,
good book.
it's a dense read. It's a dense read. That's, you know, she ain't a thin girl. It's a big book, but a great book. So there's another book that is in line with that you would probably really appreciate, and it's called "The Coddling of the American Mind." That is
Okay.
another. That's a good one.
I have not read that.
Yeah, and then there's also "The Hard Thing About Hard Things." So "The Hard Thing About Hard Things" is also a good book. I do, although I love them, I tend to kind of shy away from more of like the military style books of like the Jocko books, and like the just tell you suck, and like,
Yeah.
who's going to carry the boats. I mean, I think all that's cool, but I'm like, come on, like you're on an elliptical at 6 a.m. at your posh gym, and then you're going to hit the sauna. You ain't carrying no damn boats. Shut up. Like, shut up. You're sitting behind a computer all day. Like, let's not church it up, Derek. Come on, you ain't. Yeah.
I've actually been trying to, like,
I'm
really
here to
deep.
go work. I'm like, you get in an ice bath on purpose. Like, like what? Shut up. Like, I'm not doing hard things, bro. Like,
So what I loved about the Jocko books was the storytelling
oh, he's a
that they
great
had through
storyteller.
it.
He's a phenomenal
It's
storyteller.
yes,
One of
so
my
good.
favorites. One of my favorites.
Yeah.
I just
Um,
think you're either disciplined or you're not. Like, and I think for me, life has enough hard thrown into it, and I've experienced enough trauma. At this point, I've led 162 funerals, um,
yeah.
and that's a lot. And so I don't. The idea of like I need to make it harder and do more hard things. I'm like, nah, dude. Uh, Life can be hard enough without needing to create friction in your life. Like,
Yep.
some people I think do. I think that's fine. Some people, I listen. If you call plunge, I'm not dogging you. If you spin around in a circle 10 times while speaking your affirmations and clearing your room with sage, I think that's awesome too. Got no problem with it. Um, I think if you like to run marathons every day, at 2:30 a.m. and just blink really fast to sleep, I think that's awesome. Um, I just, I don't have that. I don't have that miracle morning. So I wake up early, but that's just because I grew up shoveling horse shit. So it's never left.
Oh. Yeah, man. I used to think that, if you wanna make it and you wanna be successful, you gotta wake up at 4:30 AM, you gotta go out there
I
and,
do.
like, do all this stuff, and now I'm like, "Dude, I wanna work 25 hours a week, take home $60,000 a month, and I'm completely set. I can do all the I can spend that extra, was it 35 hours a week that I was working, thinking that I had to do a minimum 60 hours a week to
Mhm.
actually go out there and make a bigger difference in the world and have the
Yeah,
money to actually, you
that's
know,
it.
provide that difference."
That's it. Yep.
Awesome. So, final question.
Let's go.
Fast forward to the end of your life.
Yep.
If everyone you've interacted with could remember only one message from you, what would you want that to be?
Just listen to what my son has to say about me.
Love that.
And if I'm the man that I say that I am, and I continue to be that man, then he'll be able to carry on the stories that leave in the box with me. And yeah, that would be enough.
Giving me goosebumps over here, brother. No, that's no, I love that.
Yeah, probably different than what you usually hear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, how I answer that is like, you know what? Like, the one thing I want people to understand is just because you've had a dark past doesn't mean your future can't be bright.
sure.
And, like, we all go through some type of shit growing up.
Mhm.
Some people worse than others, but
Mhm.
it's all the same poop that we're
Yep.
drugged through,
Yep.
and it's what you do after that and how you handle that
Hmm. That's it.
that makes the difference, 100%.
That's it.
Well, Cody, I appreciate
Uh,
you coming on here.
yeah, man.
Great conversation, brother. Like,
Yeah, it
super good
was.
conversation. Uh, like, where can people
Yeah,
contact you?
sure. I mean, you can go to codyjefferson.com. Everything from Roundtable to one-to-one consulting to booking speaking is all there. You can find me on Instagram, Cody Jefferson. You can find me on Facebook at the same. Um, if you find where I'm speaking at any point in time throughout the year, because I do I'm a pretty well-traveled keynote, and so if ever you're somewhere that I am, please reach out, shoot me a message on Instagram or something. Let's grab coffee. I would love to hear your story. I believe everybody's got one, and so I love hearing them, and I love collecting them. So um, I get to do a lot of cool things. I probably, maybe I seem pretty cool on the internet. End of the day, made a deal with God that if I ever got too big or too cool, that I couldn't, just correspond with people that had something to say or needed a bit of insight, that he could just take it all the way. So please reach out. I'm here to serve. So
Beautiful.
yeah, man.
Love it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Of course.